So how you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. Apologies for no video yesterday. I had to get up ridiculously early from Lyon, get myself down to Nice. I was knackered. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to leave it. I'm going to wait until today. But we have a lot to react to from the weekend. And in this video, I'm looking back to Saturday and in particular Ireland. Incredible victory over South Africa. A genuine privilege to be there at the Stade de France. But the three biggest reasons that if I was an Irish rugby fan, I'd be feeling really, really positive after that result. So that's what I'm getting into in this video. There might be many other reasons that you think of that I don't mention, so you can drop them in the comment section down below. And also like the video, subscribe to the channel. But let's get into it. I'll just quickly say as well, there are a few people that over the weekend came and said hello that were obviously over here at the World Cup and saw me. And it's so awesome to meet you guys and to say thanks for the support you give me on the channel. So if you do see me out and about in France, do come over and say hello. It's wicked just to say hello and have a little natter about the rugby, in all honesty, because that's why we're all here, let's be honest. But let's look back on Saturday, Ireland against South Africa. I've heard some people, and some of whom have spent a lot of years watching a lot of rugby, have been at every single Rugby World Cup, say that it's possibly the best game that they've ever seen. I'm not sure that I'll quite go that far, but it kind of shows you just how brilliant it was. Incredible result. I think South Africa will come away from it obviously disappointed, but perhaps still looking at it and feeling like they can learn a lot from that game. But from an Irish perspective, what are the three biggest plus points, the three big takeaways? Well, number one for me was physicality. Coming into the game, everyone was saying Ireland have to be able to match the Springboks' physicality. It's a cliche, it's an incredibly obvious point, but it's also totally true. You look at this Springbok team, and in particular when they're bringing 7 forwards off the bench and the strength and depth in that squad, they are an incredibly physical side. That's kind of reflected in the fact that they held Ireland to just the one try. They absolutely hammer teams. Peter Steph du Toit was flying out of the line, getting into the face of Johnny Sexton repeatedly, and the Irish fly half, the experienced campaigner, is just so tough. He got up every single time. But Ireland did match that physicality, and they took it to South Africa. They were able to get themselves over the gain line at times as well. And I think that was probably, for people that said Ireland can't win this World Cup, and I kind of raised this point myself as a question mark of what happens when they come up against a really physical, horrible pack? Because if you want to look at Ireland over the years, that had often been an area that they'd come up short. I don't necessarily think with this Andy Farrell's Ireland side, but still it was a question mark hanging over them. And it's also a question mark hanging over Leinster. And if we look at La Rochelle over the last few years in the Champions Cup, and the majority of the Irish side is made up of that Leinster team. So that was a major thing, I think, that people looked towards and thought, what happens for Ireland when they come up against that? Well, they came up against that in this South African pack and they met that challenge head on. And if they can do it against the Springboks, you know that they can do it against any other side in the world and any other side in this tournament. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the World Cup, but I think that is a question answered from an Irish point of view. And if I was an Irish fan, I'd have been absolutely delighted with it. So physicality, that's point number one from me. And from watching it there, actually, it was one of those games that you just marvelled at the hits. It was absolutely brutal, but incredibly fair as well. It wasn't a dirty game. It was just so physical. You've got to admire what those squads, what those sets of guys put themselves through. Okay, number two is resilience. I spoke to Peter O'Reilly, who writes for The Times, after the game. We caught up the next day, and resilience was probably one of the main things that he spoke about after the game, and it's something that Johnny Sexton and Andy Farrell were keen to highlight as well in their post-match press conference, in that you look at that match and there were so many moments, I think from both teams actually, where they lost a little bit of momentum. They had the ball in the red zone, they weren't able to capitalise on points, but Ireland was still able to come back into it. And actually I think resilience is best exhibited by the way Ireland started the game. They wanted to make a statement early, didn't they? They got a penalty down in South Africa's 22 and they kicked for the corner. They ended up missing that line out and the ball got cleared away. It was a missed opportunity. And speaking of the line out, actually, they lost their last 4, which has been pretty well documented, but things weren't necessarily always going Ireland's way in that game. But they stayed in the fight. As the best teams often do, you stay in the fight and eventually you're able to get yourself over the winning line. I think that probably is fueled by the fact that they're on a 16-game winning streak. This is a side that have become used to winning. I think winning does become a habit, and that's just going to give you a confidence because they know the quality of teams that they've come up against and have been able to beat on quite a consistent basis. So they would have had that confidence, but they still had their resilience because I know they've played France at the Stade de France, haven't they? They've had big Grand Slam winning games. New Zealand, the series they won over in New Zealand. But I'm not necessarily sure that they would have had the kind of pressure cooker game that we saw on Saturday. I think World Cups are different, the very nature of them. And they came through it. They had the resilience to come through it. This is a mentally tough team. And that, again, another massive checkpoint in the column of this Irish side. Final point and my third one, as I've said already, there will be other points. There was a lot of good stuff in the game. So put it in the comments section. What kind of stood out for you? I've just picked out the three main things from my point of view. But number 3 is defence. And I mentioned the Springbok defence already, just the one try. The Irish defence, likewise, incredibly resolute. Because South Africa had opportunities, particularly in that second half. It was starting to get to a point in the game where you felt like the Springboks could almost just break it open, and they had a lot of pressure, a lot of phases in the Ireland half, in the Ireland 22, and Ireland came up with steals. They came up with key tackles, and it's across the whole team as well. The turnover that still stands out for me was really near the end of the game around midfield when Bundy Aki went in and won the ball, and we know he's so good over the breakdown. As actually a lot of inside centres have to be these days. You look at Jonathan Danty at France, just to pick out another one. Often that's a position because of where they are on the field. You have to be pretty good over the breakdown. But across the team, the defence from Ireland was exceptional. They went incredibly hard at the breakdown. That stood out in the first half in particular to try and get at that ball. That might be something actually that I think teams will look at for facing the Springboks. I think first of all, go hard at that breakdown. And second of all, when facing Ireland, you've got to make sure you have players at that ruck to be able to clear them out, because they will go for your ball, they'll try and pinch it, they'll hold you up and try and make moves. I mean, that hit on Etzebeth was just an absolute statement. That felt like a moment. So loads of positives for Ireland overall. I've picked out 3 there: physicality, resilience and defence. And it's kind of interesting that it's those 3, because most of the time when I'm talking about this Ireland team, I'm talking about that they're the best attacking team in the world, that they're the most cohesive, that their attack is, when it gets flowing, a beautiful thing to watch. But they didn't have to rely on that in this game. They couldn't rely on that in this game because the South African defence was so good. And this maybe actually links back to the resilience point. Ireland didn't win this game, I think, in the way that a lot of people thought they would. They won the arm wrestle. They won the arm wrestle against the Springboks, who are probably the best side in that sort of environment, in that sort of game in the world. It wasn't just their attack breaking them open and being so cohesive. They had to hang in there. So resilience is maybe the biggest point of the 3. But anyway, let me know what you think. I'm going to try and do more videos. I've come down to Nice, so over the next week or so I'll be down here in the south of France in the sun, and hopefully being able to do a couple of videos maybe every single day. So look forward to reading your comments. Also, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. It is a massive boost for the channel. Also, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.